Hello, you beautiful people. So, we finally got some new and really interesting info related to ANAXA and his kit. And I'm guessing you're here because you're interested in this guy just like me, or maybe want to know what his kit does, right? Well, in any case, you've landed on the perfect video to get all the info related to his kit. Today, I'm mainly going to discuss about some interesting info that we got on ANAXA'S path and his element, and along with this, we'll also make speculations about his kit based on the previous info that we have right now. I have to say though, some of you guys might be really disappointed with his element and his path to some degree, and honestly, I'm somewhat disappointed as well. Before we go on though, if you're planning to pull for the Herda or the rerunning units in version 3.0, you might want to check out Lubar because on this site, you can save up to a total of 23% on all your purchases. Just as an example, I'll buy this 3280 Oniric Shard pack for $43, and this same pack costs me about $50 from the in-game shop. You can see that it's cheaper, right? The top-up process is honestly really easy as well because all you need to do is enter your UID in this box and choose your respective server depending on your account. After waiting for a few minutes, I received my Jades with the double top-up bonus because it was my first purchase and saved a decent amount of money. Also, other than HSR, you can top up on Genshin as well using Lubar, and both of these games have quite a lot of 5-star reviews. Lastly, if you use my link which is in the description or the pinned comment, you can get an extra 8% off on top of all the other discounts, so do keep that in mind. Anyways, moving on from that, I'm just going to mention the usual disclaimer that everything which I mention in this video is taken from different sources, and it can be changed at any point of time, so take all this info with a grain of salt. Also, some of the info that I share throughout this video might be considered as a very small story spoiler by some people, so do keep that in the back of your mind. With that being said, let's begin without wasting any more of your time or energy. Okay, so during the 3.1 Trailblaze mission, I'm going to assume that at some point in the story, we'll meet ANAXA, and I think a lot of people already expected this, right? Now, after meeting him, we'll supposedly fight a boss together, and similar to a lot of other boss fights in HSR, he helps us out during this fight, and we can use some of his abilities. Basically, ANAXA will help us in a similar way to how we can use Dan Heng's ability during the Fantilia boss fight or the Astral Express during the Sunday boss fight. I have to say though, I think ANAXA's case during this boss fight might be a little bit special because he uses his abilities throughout the battle at multiple instances, and you don't really need to press a button to activate his abilities. Alright, seeing as I'm done explaining how this boss fight works, let's take a look at all the new info that we can get from this fight. So, first of all, it's pretty much confirmed at this point that ANAXA will be an imaginary type unit because throughout the entire fight, he dealt yellow damage, which just means that he was dealing imaginary damage. Yep, for some reason, they thought that the ice or the wind element won't suit his design at all, and at the end, instead of going for variety, they decided to just slap the imaginary element on him. Honestly, at this point, this doesn't even surprise me anymore because for some reason, almost every male in HSR likes the imaginary element way too much. Other than that, ANAXA being an imaginary unit instead of being an ice unit does align with the info that we got from a source like 2 weeks ago, and this same source also stated that ANAXA will follow the path of erudition. All in all, I guess the previous info stating that ANAXA will be an ice nihility unit turned out to be false, and according to the new info, he will be an imaginary type unit who follows the path of erudition. Now, discussing a little bit about his abilities, ANAXA seems to do an AoE attack after every enemy action which does a ton of imaginary damage, and along with this attack also debuffs all the enemies present on the field. Basically, this attack confirms that ANAXA is going to be an erudition unit who deals decent damage while also having supportive capabilities, somewhat similar to Jade. Again, as I just stated, ANAXA is definitely going to be more than just an AoE damage dealer because during this fight, he quite literally reduces the defense of all the enemies present on the field by 50%. Yep, I know a 50% AoE defense reduction is quite insane, and this number is probably going to be a little bit lower in his actual kit as it's just a story fight, but in my opinion, I honestly like it a lot when a unit does things outside of their particular path. Overall, all of this info lines with the previous info as I mentioned before, and we can safely assume that almost everything regarding it is true, and it basically gives us a clear identity of what ANAXA's kit will look like. Next up, taking a look at some older info. We already know that ANAXA will have an action delay, elemental implant, and a defense shred, and his kit will primarily be focused around dealing additional damage. Okay, I think characters dealing additional damage seems to be a major theme of Amphirius because so far, both the supportive type units, namely Tribbie and Anaxa, seem to have it. Along with this, we have a new planar set releasing in patch 3.1, and this set pretty much boosts the wearer's crit rate and the additional damage dealt by them. Honestly, I think it's very safe to assume that Anaxa will be a crit scaling unit that uses this set to improve his crit stats, so he can deal a decent amount of AoE damage. Also, do keep in mind that he will most likely have a weakness implant in his kit, and this will synergize really well with Tribbie, who provides resistance penetration with her skill, because weakness implant doesn't actually impact an enemy's resistance. So Tribbie providing resistance penetration synergizes perfectly with Anaxa, and it will make him deal much more normal and break damage. Other than that, we already know that Anaxa does imaginary damage, and whenever he breaks an enemy, the imaginary break will automatically delay this particular enemy's action by a decent amount. I mean, we all know that action delay is a really strong mechanic because it lets you be safer while also having longer damage windows, which is a part of the reason why Ron May and Welt used to be so strong when sustains were less broken. Now, along with weakness implant and the action delay, I think we all also realize that defense shred is one of the best debuffs in this game as it has a linear scaling. And this means that it doesn't really get saturated, and it is always a strong damage increase. So Anaxa having this in his base kit is a sign that he will be really strong. If I speculate a little bit myself, I think Anaxa will work really well with the Herta as they seem to have good synergy because Anaxa spams his frequent AoE attacks, which should help the Herta stack up her interpretation stacks really fast, and use her enhanced skill on enemies who already have their defense reduced. I also expect Anaxa to pair really well with Tribbie as she appreciates AE attacks by dealing additional damage, and her resistance penetration also synergizes greatly with him. Anyways, with that, I've covered all the recent info that we got on Anaxa, and along with this, we also made some speculations related to his kit and his playstyle. Do remember to comment down how you guys feel about his kit because personally, even though I'm disappointed that he is not an ice-type unit, I was already planning to pull him because I like his design and now I can easily put him in the Herta's team. Also, if you actually ended up watching until the end, thanks, and you might want to consider subscribing as well. With that being said, I really love y'all, and I will see you in another one.